Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another rousing rendition of what we like to call the BREADren podcast. That's BREADren, B-R-E-A-D, like bread, because we always talking about that bread, and we always about our bread. And when I say we, I always have to give honor to my two wonderful co-hosts, Dr. Ajamu Loving, PhD, and DJ BREADren Wills. How y'all doing tonight, gentlemen?
Outstanding, man.
Great. Yeah, man. Doing
beautiful, great. Beautiful. Before y'all even, blast me out about it, we did mention that I have a child on the way, and I am very proud to announce that my child is now here. She is also in the studio with us right now. She's napping, and she says, "Good day to you all."
Salutations are definitely given to Miss Avery.
Yes. Welcome to the world, young lady.
Yes, y'all, and we don't stop.
And congratulations to you, Arthur, man. You're going to be an amazing father. And hats off to Shannon as well. Very good to know that she's doing well. She's going to be an amazing mother. I can't wait to meet Avery. I'm sure that the wife and I will be up to Long Island soon to check you guys out.
Oh, yes. Y'all are always welcome. And before we get too deep in, I just want to say that, that whole process of bringing a child into this world, I have a very much newfound respect for all women, all mothers, and in particular my wife. And, not to toot my own home, but I did a good job on my own, but my wife did an amazing job. So I definitely want to thank her for, embarking on this journey and taking the bulk of the load, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, I can wholeheartedly promise you, if I know Shannon like I think that I know Shannon, she's going to find a way to balance that load out for you over the next 18 some-odd years. So the fact that Avery's in the studio with you right now does not surprise me. But it's gonna be great, man. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I don't know what else is going to be said this evening, but I can tell you that thanking your wife might have been the smartest words that will be said this evening. It's definitely going to be in contention. I can promise you that.
Oh, yes. Strategic moves to maintain the power circle and the strategic partnerships here within.
Hey, good job.
It's part of the language of the contract. Compliments must be given, and honor must be given at all times. But we definitely want to take the time to, thank and appreciate everybody that's been supporting and listening to us and giving us feedback. We've heard great things so far, and we promise to, bring y'all better content and better quality, as time goes on. And make sure that you are checking us out at anchor.fm/BREADrenPod. That's Anchor, ANCHOR.FM/BREADRENPOD, BREADrenPod. And you can follow us on Instagram at BREADrenPod. You can also find all three of us at our different social media outlets, ajamuloving.com, DREADrenWillsConsulting.com, and mmbbgw.com. And that's how you can stay up to date with us. But we're going to hop right into the topic tonight, and as usual, we always like to start it off. Gentlemen, I am sipping on, as usual, Woodford Reserve. I'll probably be on this until that bottle's gone. So that's what I foresee, but I'm sipping on Woodford Reserve. Dr. Loving, what are you on?
It's midweek, so I'm taking it light and doing the beer thing today, man. This is this nice, cool, crisp American lager.
Yes. Always a good choice. DJ, what are you on?
Hey, man, anything is possible. So I'm over here with my standard drink. I have the Hennessy flowing.
Yes. Is it just regular Hennessy or Hennessy White again?
No, we've filtered back to the regular Hennessy. We'll save the Hennessy White for Dallas's birthday.
Oh, yes, a classic. An upcoming birthday for the young prince. Always welcome as usual. Let's embark on a wonderful conversation. Let's drop knowledge and game, and let's talk about our bread. Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers to you, bro.
All right, so this week we kind of alluded to it last week when we were talking about emotional intelligence, and we kept reminding people that before you tap in, which is tap into your emotional intelligence so that you can become a better asset for yourself and for your organizations. And we kind of alluded to avoiding the box that is possible when you encounter certain situations, especially in the corporate landscape and also in your personal landscape. So we, that's the topic that we're kind of going to focus on. We'll branch off into some other things, but avoiding the box And Dr. Levin, I want to start with you as far as in a professional sense, what do you deem? What is your definition of the so-called box, and what does the phrase "avoiding the box" mean to you?
That good question. All right. So for me, when I think about the box, I think about siloed, antiquated sort of group thought that never really strives to do something different because you, as a company, an institution, a group, have been used to doing the same thing, right? And there's some wise folks to talk about how if you do the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, then you are operating the operational definition in that case of insanity. And I think that if you're going to go new places and do new things, then you have to start to get outside of what has been comfortable or completely traditional or all of the things that you've been doing. Now, that's not to say that everything that you've been doing needs to be completely abandoned. But at the same time, you have to be willing to try new things and willing to open your mind. And I think that's the most important part of it, opening your mind to new possibilities that you hadn't opened your mind to previously. And so when I think about getting out of the box, that's what it means to me.
Most definitely. DJ, in your opinion, what is that box, and what does the phrase "avoiding the box" mean to you? Because what we're going to gear to is we were talking, amongst ourselves, and we're going to kind of correlate the imposter syndrome. And once you do that, I wanna throw out some titles to you all. But real quick before you start, Dr. Levin mentioned it's like groupthink. And I want you to kind of speak towards, from leadership perspectives, how if the leader has been placed into a box by either the organization or themselves, how that affects that groupthink and, kind of boxing the entire group in because they're trying to align, their workers underneath them into that same box.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a few words that would describe it. Number one is dangerous. Extremely dangerous. Number two, it's not profitable. Number three, devastating. And the reason why I bring those phrases up is because in order to really unlock the potential in the organization, you have to have leaders that are free to engage people and meet them where they are and allow them to grow into different roles by employing the various talents that they have. One of the biggest challenges and hurdles that I think we face as leaders and also as employees, specifically in the corporate landscape, is the fact that when you interview for a role, you're typecasted. A lot of times that role is not robust and it does not represent the full capabilities or potential that you have. So, we're taught to either cater a resume to the role or cater the conversation to a role, as opposed to showing the robust skills and aptitude that we may have as individuals that would allow the leaders or the hiring manager, so to speak, to really tap into some of the things that we may be able to provide outside of that specific role. So when I think about avoiding the box, it brings up everything that's wrong with the corporate landscape and not necessarily the things that are right. That group thought really leads to a lot of homogeneous types of decisions, and it leads to people making decisions in a vacuum. And when that's done, you can't really tap into the genius of the group. And what you tend to do is do exactly what Dr. Levin alluded to. You create silos, and people that are most alike click up and they form their various opinions around the organization or the direction that it's going. And that's not really beneficial to anyone. So when I hear those words and I think about those words and I think about what they've meant to me in my career from a leadership perspective, dangerous, devastating, and non-profitable.
I just wanted to point out, because I'm a country boy, so I was thinking silos like country silos where you store the grain, but I just want everybody to know that silo is also a verb meaning to isolate, where you isolate one system or process or department from the others. So just wanted to make that distinction. But DJ, you brought up a good point, and you brought up a key word that I wanted to just point out to everybody. And for those who take notes, we heard that a lot of people were taking notes on the episodes, but typecasting, and often we associate that with the entertainment world and specific acting roles being typecast. But in the corporate world, typecasting is definitely a thing. And I just wanted to pose a form of question to you all in terms of kind of gearing it towards the imposter syndrome that can come about when you're typecast in terms of diversity. And I want both of you all to elaborate on that, but especially when it comes to like checking the box, whereas, oh, you went to such and such school, you have, such and such qualifications, you have such and such extracurricular activities, and you also check this minority box, so therefore you qualify as what we're looking for when it comes to diversity, which, like you mentioned, DJ, is one of those things. If that's the group think for the organization, then that can also be dangerous. It can not be profitable because it doesn't necessarily mean you're getting the best bang for your buck. So I want to throw it back to you, and then we'll throw it to Dr. Loving, of just, the severe impacts of typecasting in terms of trying to create diversity, because once you're, in all honesty, the box is, in essence, a typecasting of sorts. Whether you put yourself into it or you were brought into the box and not even knowing that was the reason you were brought in. So I just wanted you to speak on that point a little bit.
No, you make a great point, and I think that when we take a look at this, you take a step back, you look at some of the recent events that have happened over the last couple of weeks, and we've talked about this as a group. You look at some of the things in the news relative to some of these celebrities getting their kids into certain universities, and I would say the tools that they create, or the process or system in which they create to support and facilitate the things that happen over the course of a very long period of time is very structured. That's a typecasting of its own. But then you also have minorities that are combating those things as well. So you take me for an example. I'm a proud product of a historically black college and university, Tuskegee University. And I would tell you that I have been well equipped to walk into any room that I've ever walked into from a corporate perspective, be able to speak my mind, speak intelligently, and hold my own. Now, I also think that when you think about these things, you have to think about the environment in which these things happen. Now, you look at Tuskegee, and you went there, so Dr. John Loving went to Morehouse. Those are very proud brands who have had a storied history. There's longevity around the accreditation process and what have you. So even as it relates to typecasting amongst historically black colleges and universities, we are graduates of some of the finest in the country with the longevity and name behind it that will allow some credence to your positioning in terms of the corporate landscape. Now, we look at some others who have had a very storied history but run into some problems. Folks that have graduated from some of these universities are often ostracized, criticized, or ridiculed, and they're unable to attain employment. And I think ultimately it's unfair because they're not being judged on their merit. They're being judged on, some of the political processes that a university has to go through in order to keep its accreditation. I think the vast difference lies in the fact that some of these students don't have other options. They also don't have the parents with the resources that can afford, to pay $500,000 to get them into the college of their choice, and then turn around and pay hundreds of thousands or more dollars to get them through college. Many minority candidates are going into severe debt just to gain an opportunity to expose themselves to higher education. And that's one of the largest cost structures that they have in their lives post-graduation. When you look at this system that's perpetuating this, you end up in a situation where there was an article that I read that talks about the support that goes on over a lifetime. You have some individuals that attend these prestigious universities who do not have the grades to get in. They're getting in over candidates that do, and some of those candidates are minority candidates. But they also have the types of families that can put in place coaches from an early level. So I'm going to teach you or hire someone to write your essay. I'm going to hire a corporate coach for you. You have the proper last name that, you sound like an executive. You look like an executive. You have a presence and such. So a lot of these things are set in place prior to something academic ever happening. So when we talk about an imposter syndrome, sometimes things are set in motion well in advance of you getting there. And if you don't really know who you are and you can't avoid that box, so to speak, to say, well, hey, that role is for him or her, and these roles are for you. You have to get outside of that and own who you are. You get to define who you are. Your time, talent, and abilities are just as important as anyone else's. And I think that we have to be careful to impart that upon our graduates of historically black colleges, universities, degree certified folks, veterans, and et cetera, because a lot of these people have the skills necessary to truly lead and transform organizations. They just don't have the proper last name, or they haven't had a corporate coach hired. So one of the things that's really encompassing in avoiding the box is defining yourself and really getting mentorship and understanding what it is you want to accomplish and how it is you can go about doing it. But it is critically important that you establish and you own that for yourself.
Well put. So, Dr. Levin, what I want to pose to you is, because DJ brought up some great points that I want you to, not in essence counter, but to kind of just go deep and give insight with it. Because he brought up the fact, we're all products of HBCUs. And in terms of, recent allegations and scandals of sorts, in a sense, we can think about it as a lot of those children, because we all came across the article where they were talking about, it wasn't necessarily an article, but we'll say that for purposes here. We came across the article where it was just breaking down the whole entire process of how that thing really works, is where, they were, there are coaches hired and mentors hired, to where not necessarily the qualified person is getting positions and getting into these schools, but then they were kind of groomed to where they were, in essence, put into a box, and then they, in essence, have become imposters and not even knowing it, because it's just the way things go for them. But then also, on the flip side, when it comes to people like us, people like ourselves, minorities in the workplace, and people that come from HBCUs, where we're typecasted and put into what is, in essence, that black box, to where it's, hey, you came from a well-to-do black school, and you've done well-to-do things. We need you here to make us look good, in essence, for diversity, and you've been typecasted, an affirmative action role, if you will. But then also on the flip side, you've got the others who have been placed into a box by their own, in order to prolong and prolong, the family name, the legacy, and things of that nature. So I just wanted to kind of pose that to you to kind of, draw your points from that, of the flip sides of both, where we're put into boxes because that's, here's the open black box for diversity, versus, we're creating this box for you, my child, because this is the way that we do it in our family legacy. The Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and and such. So that's what I want to pose to you, Dr. Lovin.
Yeah, well, I will start off by saying that not all boxes are created equal, right? Because their box is the box that oversees all of the other boxes. It
Yes.
makes more money than all of the other boxes. It looks at you from your position as though you are the individual who somehow got lucky or got past the fact that you didn't have sufficient talent and skill to get there, but you got there based on your skin color, right? And I think that there are a lot of black people and other minorities, and women certainly, who have felt this feeling of being patronized by these folks from these other boxes, the Martin J. McGillicuddy type folks whose parents paid for everything and they never had to struggle a day. And they think, by virtue of that lack of struggle, somehow this makes them better and more suited to lead, which baffles me in a lot of ways, because when you think about whether it's a battlefield or in sports or anything else, most of the time the team respects a coach or a leader who's been in the trenches and actually had to go through it, had some difficulty, got some dirt on them, right? Got some scars. So you want to see when you are looking towards someone that you want to lead you through a difficult time or take you to a place that you've never been. And so it's ironic to me that the people who had to struggle and sit in that financial aid line, I don't know what the financial aid line looks like at Tuskegee. I've seen it at more.
Man.
Quite similar, right? You got.
I want to inject the point, and I think most people will agree. All HBCUs are in essence created equal because I think that process is the same across the board.
Efficient, so efficient. They all go to lunch at the same time. What? No, it's one of those deals where you had some tough time. Things weren't as automated at your university. You had to figure a lot of stuff out besides the work in the classroom. Oh, and let me assure you, man, the textbooks that they're using at these high-end universities are the same ones that they're using at the satellite schools and the compass schools for different states, and they're the same ones you're using at the HBCUs. If you know your stuff, then you know your stuff, right? The question is how confident you are about knowing your stuff and the different applications to which you can apply your stuff, right? That kid that's come from a certain background may have seen more related to investment banking than you have. You may have been exposed in the summers to things that you had not been exposed to during high school and maybe even younger years. So, yeah, there could be some things that you need to catch up on. But I would encourage anybody, especially people who hired a great height but had meager beginnings. That's where all of the great stories are. That's where a lot of the great fortunes are built, or at least the way their stories start. And so the importance of not getting in the box thinking is to recognize that because of your background, because of, your skin color, the school you came from, there are people who seek to put you in a box that's not consistent with the true level of ability that you have within you. And so what we're all trying to say here is that we want you to shine to the level you ought to shine, right? Put yourself in the positions that you deserve to be in by virtue of your talent, by virtue of your hard work, by virtue of how original you can be with your thought and how impactful those thoughts can be to create real productivity for the companies that you're working with and for yourself beyond that, right? And so when we talk about an imposter syndrome, you never hear people who are rich, whose parents paid for all of these classes and made huge donations to the colleges, feeling like an imposter, or at least expressing that feeling. It's always the individual who scrapped and worked hard and saved and had to work jobs while they were in college and had student loans. Those are the individuals who somehow feel like, well, maybe I don't belong here. And part of it's cultural, right? Part of it, especially if you're in something that's, investments or higher order banking or private equity and those things. Culturally, those folks have gone to the same day schools. They've gone to the same, the same expensive high schools and colleges and belong to the same fraternities in many cases. So, yeah, I can see how you might feel like an outsider in certain ways. But in all ways material, in terms of your ability to actually get the job done, in many cases you can run circles around these folks, but you have to choose to do so. And you have to recognize that you might not be running those circles in the same places they're running them. It might not be at their firm, where all of that pomp and circumstance is respected. Learn the craft, know how to do it, and maybe you start your own firm or work with a firm where that gutty underdog person respects what it is that you bring to the table, and they want you to do the things that are going to set you apart and make their company different, stronger in ways that the companies that are more settled and white collary looking in terms of their approach, they might not appreciate the hustle that you bring to the table. So you don't always get to hustle at the same place. Not everybody is going to appreciate what you bring to the table equally. It's important that you appreciate it and you understand that you can run wherever it is that you need to run to be successful.
Hold on, real quick, DJ. I don't want you to lose your point, but I want to throw something to you because Dr. Levin really gave a good setup for what I wanted to pose to you in particular is because, diversity is kind of a commodity at this point in time, and we can be honest about it, where we know that a lot of companies are doing things where they're screwing up and they're embracing diversity all of a sudden to, in a PR shuffle to like, okay, let's clean it up. But then all of the companies in the background are noticing and saying, okay, let's go ahead and embrace diversity. So they're creating these boxes. And so, DJ, what I want to pose to you and throw to you is how do people embrace that box, but also at the same time avoid the box they're being put in? So we know that box is being placed there for a purpose. It's like, hey, doors are open. We need you in a sense. But I want you to talk to the point of getting that box, taking advantage of that box, but also avoiding the box that you're being typecast for. And Dr. Levin kind of alluded to it, where it's like, okay, we're in the door. Let's really use these skills so that people have to respect the talent versus, I'm being brought in for a specific purpose. So I wanted to throw that to you and, elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, man, I can definitely take that. So, start with this. You brought up the point earlier about HBCUs and just the process by which they kind of mold you. I think that it's meant to make you work for it. Most friends that I have that have attended HBCUs talk about, having to persevere and struggle through things. And I think that is true. When when I landed in my corporate role, I felt like if this is all you got for me, then okay, great. But what organizations feel is we have to give you a little bit at a time. In order to take, and I use that word intentionally, in order to take or demand what it is you deserve and want, there are very specific steps that you need to take. One of the first things you need to do is make sure that your manager and or team is tied to your direct success. So one of the things that I began to implement for myself and also for folks that I'm close to and new, if I was going into a role, a review, or what have you, the first thing I did, I'd never wait until the manager says it's time for a review. If there's an annual review, I do it semi-annually. If there's a semi-annual review, we do it quarterly, because I don't want to give you the opportunity to blindside me by saying I haven't been doing the things that are necessary to move forward. You also want to make sure that you provide some type of stretch assignment or a goal or initiative for yourself outside of what your manager or leader wants you to have. So I developed a 3-page PowerPoint. I go in, it's very simple, author. I talk about, here's the role that I have or the box that you've put me in. Here's what I'm doing to accomplish those things. Here are my list of things that I have decided that I would like to stretch myself and do outside of my role that you as my manager or leadership team have agreed would be beneficial for my career. And here are the things that I've asked you to provide for me in order to ensure that these things are happening. So on a quarterly basis, I walk in and I ask, am I meeting the bar relative to my box, so to speak? Yes, I am. Okay, we can check that. Where am I relative to these stretch assignments? Have I met or exceeded your expectations as it relates to this? Can we move on to something even more expansive than this? And are you willing to commit additional resources to me in order to help me do it? When you have those frequent check-ins, that relieves or removes any doubt when you walk into your annual review, your semi-annual review. How am I performing? What am I doing? How do I stack relative to my peers? Because just because it's not my job, if I see you putting someone else on a trajectory of where I want to be, I'm going to include those things in my stretch assignments. So if that means that I need to travel around the country and speak on behalf of the company, then so be it. I'll raise my hand to do that. If it means that, hey, if you really want to be one of the executive leaders here, you have to be willing to travel at least 50% of the time. So you have to identify the things that are going to get you outside of that box. But then more importantly, you need to determine, are you willing to commit to do the things that are necessary and required of you, which in all likelihood, it's a cakewalk to you compared to what it would be for others, because you are accustomed to traveling the road less traveled. You have a lot of folks who complain about coming into a job, they sit down every day, and it's minimal work. It just requires you to think a little bit. For many of us, we've had to work, go to college, and figure out something at home at the same time. So when you pose that question to me, it's really second nature. It's a law of survival that kicks in, because that's what I've been taught to do my entire life. But as Dr. Jamu talked about earlier, it's the confidence of deploying and embracing those skills that have been put within you. I think that all too often we discount and discredit the ability to survive and sustain ourselves. And that is the staying power that you need when you get into the corporate landscape, because it's a mental grind. You're not out in 100-degree weather, putting down the pavement or the concrete, but you are in 100-degree weather as it relates to your character, your pedigree, your background, your, basically all the things that make you you. That's the temperature that's turned up on you to evaluate who you are. And if you're not comfortable, you can melt in those situations. But I think that the molding that we get from the universities that we attend, and also from our support systems, that typecasting should be something that we embrace, because what it allows you to do is know the devil that you're dealing with, so to speak, or, now that I know the rules of engagement, I can now exploit them. So if I know, hey, here's what I'm being given, I'm going to be evaluated on this level, I can easily take this role and expand it and use it for my benefit, not only for mine, but for the benefit of the organization. Because again, you have skills that your manager does not know about, because you applied and were accepted into that specific role. And that's all they care about you doing.
So
is that.
So definitely, Dr. Levin, I want to throw it to you under what DJ just said, because he talked about embracing that box, but I want you to kind of go into, we're talking about this box, and the box has 4 sides, and boxes can be all different sizes, because we can have a very specific box that says you have to hit all of these points to be typecast and put into this particular box, or we can have this very broad box to where we can put a couple of people in this box because you only have to hit 1 or 2 qualifications. But I want you to kind of speak to the pressure of the box, depending on what that box is, because you can have that box that just simply says, we need this, this, and this. And a lot of people can fit into that box and be, what we're saying can be typecast to that role. But once you're into that box and you've embraced that box, like DJ said, the rules of engagement now. Speak to the pressures of that box and, overcoming those pressures to do what DJ said and kind of escape out of that box where we're talking about avoiding it. But just talk about the pressures of said box.
And I think this is an important sort of direction to go to, right? Because a lot of times when you're hired, it's done it. We have achieved diversity, and if you're a person who has a degree and you have the ability to label that as one, then now they can say we've not just achieved diversity. It's not all. And then what happens is the as you mentioned, of the box, right? People say, well, this is how we've done things here in the past when you try to press to change something, right? When you start talking about at Tuskegee, right? Well, typically we go to these big state schools, and we go to Dartmouth, and we go to these IVs, and that's where we go. That's typically what we've done. And the pressure is for you to say, oh, what you've done is good. Let's continue to do that. And there's nothing they like more than for the new black person to say that their old policies and procedures lived up to something that was okay in terms of creating diversity, right? If you co-sign it, it's all good, right? And so the problem is there is that pressure that exists within the corporation, that inertia that companies have in terms of wanting to be like they are, that can start to affect you. If you let it, you start thinking, well, maybe I need to learn how to play golf better. That's my problem, right? Is that they're not inviting me to things because I need to learn how to play golf better. Maybe I don't need to call myself a Jamu. Maybe I need to call myself AJ, because that'll be easier for people to pronounce, and they'll be more comfortable for them. And what you start doing is shaping your box within the box to keep yourself more palatable to everybody else instead of pushing on the edges, which is why they say they brought you there, to try to change and transform the way that this company relates to people that are different than their traditional or the clients they had in the past. I talk to my students all the time about how business is a forward-looking opportunity. You are doing your company a disservice when you dim your light when it comes to diversity, because the future of this country is a diverse one, right? And so the future clients of any successful company of the future it's going to have to be able to serve those needs of diverse people, right? So the ability to see that a shirt with a big black circle face on it with bright red lips is something that could easily be seen as offensive to black folks is one thing, because I think we can all see it. But to feel empowered enough to say something is another. And so part of that is on the corporation, right? But also part of it is on you, because you don't want to. One of the most disappointing things that I saw from a person that I admire was the individual talking about how we can't be ourselves. We can't afford to push against things that we think are wrong and just lean just on integrity because it's too expensive, and you could end up putting yourself in a place where you don't get paid anymore, right? There are things that are more important than money. And if you push the integrity in the right type of way, you can still get paid in other ways. But what you can't get back is those times that you lost where you swallowed your pride and sat there like a gump, where you did things that you know were wrong. You're going to have to live with that forever, okay? And so it's important to me. I always say people are more important than things. Your integrity, your values, the things that actually shape you are more important than the company that you work for and the stuff that you're doing. Let your effort be a reflection of those values. Let your voice be a reflection of what you think is right. Okay? And let that effort lead you to acquiring the type of skills necessary so that you'll be valuable no matter what. But if they disagree with your approach in terms of the culture of the company, then maybe that company is not the one for you, right? That's okay. Things change. You've gained a very useful experience, and you'll have that next opportunity around the bend. But when you start compromising your integrity and you start folding yourself into some cartoonishly sad percentage of who you ought to be, man, the therapeutic expense associated with building yourself back up has got to be enormous anyway, if not impossible to accomplish. All right, so the stakes, in my opinion, are high. Right, you only get one you, and so you need to be able to look at yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and say, man, I gave my best to try to accomplish a lot on behalf of this company, for myself, to represent all of the people who sold into me throughout my life and do things in a way that we can all be proud of, right? Even if you ain't feeling the happiest about the results and you didn't get the money out of it that you wanted, you can still look back on what you did with some pride and respect for yourself. Whereas if you do things the other way, you might have a ton of money and find that reflection in the mirror difficult to look at because you're ashamed of yourself. Or even worse, you don't even recognize who that person is because you've allowed the environment to distort you and deform you to such a degree that you just become some Quasimodo type monster, figuratively, right? In terms of how you live your life and how you express yourself. So,
no, I mean,
I love the way Dr. Lovin always, really throws in his slogan in the most, affluent, persistent way. Is it flows into conversations, people over things. That's it's almost honestly a tagline and a motto for the show. But we're gonna definitely you brought up some several points that we're gonna definitely dive really deep into in the after show. So I just definitely want to remind people that that's an opportunity where we really get personal with the topic. We focus a lot on the business and the business and the corporate aspects in the main show, but the after show is where we really take it to a personal level and get really real with it. Like the real world used to say, when people stop being polite and things start getting real world, whatever city you in. But DJ, we're going to take this time to, go ahead because you wanted to bring up some systemic issues when it comes to avoiding the box. So I'll let you close it out with that, and then Dr. Levin, you'll give your closing remarks right after DJ.
Yeah, man. So, like you said, we can dive much deeper into this in the after show, but this is a systemic issue at its core. When you look at the landscape and the environment in which we're operating in, I am from Selma, Alabama, not far from where you grew up, Arthur. And I personally know families that have been impacted by zoning and districts and where your kids can go to school. And I know people that have been arrested and jailed for simply having their child go to school in a better school district 5 miles from where they live. And when you take a look at, folks setting up basically entire teams to give their kids a better opportunity at being successful, we have a systemic issue that on one hand, while we're seeing the chickens kind of come home to roost recently, we have one set of rules that apply to some folks that say, hey, you know what, you got to give your child every opportunity you can to be successful. And if that means creating a team for them and making sure that they get the best opportunities, by all means do it. And those teams are in place for them from birth, in many cases, throughout their integration into the corporate landscape. There are no penalties for that for the most part. There are people that I know that are doing serious jail time for simply saying, hey, I happen to know that the school 5 miles from where I live is a better school than what my kid would be zoned for, and so I want them to go there. I'll use, let's just say, my mother's address because my kid lives there half the time, and I'm going to send my kid to a better school. We have something severely wrong when we're punishing people for trying to simply send their kid to a better, not university, but school. But we are excusing the behavior of which I can pay to have my kid have a head start in life. I think that really speaks to the root of the systemic issues that we have in this country, because it goes beyond race and gender. This is a socio-economic issue. If you have the resources to buy your way into the higher ranks of the corporate echelon, in a lot of ways you can. Because Dr. Jamu hit it on the head. If you can play golf well, if you present well, and you're a good-looking gentleman, and we can groom you, then maybe you have a chance. We can get you on a board. You don't have to be the brightest person, but we'll figure it out. We can hire a bunch of bright people to work for you. Everyone's not afforded that opportunity. So we really have to look at things from a systemic standpoint and realize that the socioeconomics really have a lot to do with where you either end up going to school, because it's based on where you live, and then it also impacts your ability to afford certain types of education. And I think that the other issue is, he talked about it earlier, confidence. And while that may not seem like a systemic issue, the media makes sure that you know that certain groups of folks are less than based on their socioeconomic status. And that directly impacts their confidence and the ability to go out and perform. So we have a lot of work to do in terms of overcoming a lot of the negative images and the systemic processes that are out there to help, boys and girls who look like us understand the full opportunity that's in front of them. I'm firmly committed to doing it, and I appreciate the both of you for taking time to give this topic some attention tonight. So thank you.
Most definitely. And Dr. Lovin, you can go ahead and, give your closing parts as you feel.
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna lie. This whole thing, it upset me, but it didn't surprise me, right? And I say that talking about this most recent rash of parents flat out cheating. You're always gonna do your best to use your financial means to put your kids ahead, right? Make sure that they go to school with a full stomach. Make sure that if you can afford extra classes for them to take, that they take them. Make sure that you do all the things to make them the best that they can be so that they can achieve the things that they want to achieve. I'll never tear down a parent for doing that. But what these parents did was, despite the fact that they had all those advantages working for them, they decided to not just try to make their kids better than they would have otherwise been. They tried to fake and put forth an illusion that they were better than they actually are. Right? You cheated on tests. You had someone else take the exam. You pretended to be a part of a sport that you could have easily afforded to be a part of. You acted as though you did the workouts when you didn't. That's what's terrible, and that's what rips at the confidence that people would otherwise feel when they look at our system. Because you think, okay, well, maybe Chad made it there because he just happened to be smarter and he just had the stuff necessary. Yeah, he had his advantages, but within him was what it took to get there. And then you look at this and you see, nah, it wasn't within him. He didn't have that skill. He doesn't have that ability. And now you're like, oh, I'm disappointed, but I'm not surprised, because when you talk to Chad, he didn't sound that smart, right? He never seemed to have the idea. He was always taking credit for somebody else's idea. Repeating what some sister said in the meeting before the meeting, and then not giving her any credit for it, and acting as though those ideas were his, and pushing himself ahead, and all the time pushing other folks down and making himself out to be the hero, right? So I can understand people being upset, but man, I'm not surprised, right? It's one of those disappointing things that you see. Wow, what are the limits to where you will go when you already have it all? It's just sad. So I would encourage the people who actually have had to get into the muck and mire and had to work hard and to do that degree, if it was on University of Phoenix or whatever it was, that you had to struggle and do this stuff at night, and you've been looking down on yourself because you didn't go through the classic university or experience, or certainly not the Ivy League experience. I want you to take a look at what it is that you've actually gone through, not just in terms of the reading and learning what it is that you had in the books, but all of the struggle that you had, right? And recognize that pressure and that struggle is what it takes to make special things happen. They say pressure makes diamonds. There's nothing but a piece of dirt that had enough pressure on it, and it was sifted and pushed with enough pressure to make it into something that's extraordinarily precious. The same thing with pearls. It's a piece of sand that gets caught up and it just rolls around and with other deposits to the point that it becomes something very precious, right? But I don't know that the pearl, diamond, knows that it's becoming a diamond, right? And I don't know that sometimes the person who's going through what they're going through knows how special they are and how special they're becoming, but that's why I'm here, to let you know that you can take all of what it is that you've experienced in terms of pain and difficulties and use all of that as a part or a component of your overall toolbox that somebody that's never had the struggle will never have in their toolbox. And there are companies that will respect and value that, and if they don't, make your own, all right? Because you have exhibited the grit necessary to do so. So keep trucking, keep working hard, keep saving that bread, and keep listening to us. We'll be sure to try to give you as much positivity, guidance, and light as we can give and you can handle. And man, that's all I've got.
Powerful insight and opinion from both of you gentlemen, as usual. So I'll give my final thoughts as usual. Remember to define yourself. That's step number one that we're going to deem as step number one, is to avoiding the box. But, also remember that while you're avoiding the box, there is your opportunity to embrace the box. But once you embrace the box, don't let the pressure of said box, let you lose sight of yourself. So always remind yourself of who you are after you defined yourself. And if you've accepted that typecasted role, remember to take that opportunity to either broaden that box or break that box wide open. And, as usual, you can follow us on Instagram at BREADren Pod. That's BREADren, bread, like we bite our bread and we talk about our bread because we always about our bread. You can follow all of us on our social media via our websites, DestrianWellsConsulting.com for my good brother DJ, JohnMooLoving.com for the good brother Dr. John Moo Loving, PhD. And as always, stay tuned for the after show where we'll dive a little bit deeper into this on a personal level. So thank you for listening, and we love y'all.